All right, and now to take a look at the stakeholders involved in the social issue. And as expected, vaping isn't just an individual concern, it's a concern that belongs to all of its stakeholders. And in an effort to target the most affected groups, we have narrowed down to what we think are the most important three stakeholders, which is the youths who are vaping themselves, who act as the doer, the government, who acts as the challenger, and the vape manufacturers corporations, along with their shareholders, who act as the resistors. And to start off, youths as the stakeholders are what we believe the most critical because they themselves fall as the victim. Typically, their age range is 13, 18 years old. They serve in the micro-environmental level as they are consumers of nicotine devices and ultimately act as customers. Although they cannot buy the products themselves, they typically have someone boot for them, which is someone of age buying the products for them. And youths are choosing to vape, and because of that, they're risking their health, with many studies saying that nicotine causes a lot of brain development issues, and it isn't widely recognized that a lot of e-cigarettes contain higher concentrations of nicotine, more than combustible cigarettes. And the youths that are vaping are quite often inexperienced and therefore uninformed, and that's a large proportion as to why this has become a big problem in society. For the stakeholder group, the social problem will be approached with respect to their values, their motivation, and communities as discussed previously in the individual and environmental influences. Moving on to the next stakeholder, we'll be focusing on the challenger, the government. They serve as the challenger and wish to change the existing conditions of this social problem. They act in the macro level. They're not directly in the center involved with it, but they are constantly making efforts to raise more awareness and create restrictions or laws that restricts or defends youths from vaping. Although there's several more that they could do. They could implement more significant, like I said, regulations and laws that just, either makes it harder for youths to get their hands on a vape, or it can just lower the amount of nicotine, for example, so that it's not so addicting. And also just provide a lot more informative information for youths, because a lot of them, like I said, don't know exactly what they're inhaling. There have been some increasement of support to the youths from the government, like they have made a few laws saying that the nicotine balls have to, the juices for the vape need to have health risk labeling, and also introduced a new law in Canada where the nicotine level has to be below 20 milligrams, which was 50 before, or 65 even. So now that that is implemented, the addiction will be a lot lower and at least slower, rather than having 50 nicotine. So moving on to the last stakeholder is the manufacturers and their shareholders, and they are a key in the entirety of the issue, as they're the ones supplying sellers with the products and ultimately act as the root. That's why they're likely to be categorized as the resistors. And there's several different manufacturers that vary in location and size. Some are known, or well known, are Juul, Smock, and Logic. And apart from all the vape production, all these manufacturers have one thing in common, and they're out to make a profit and lawfully responsible for their shareholders' interests. So youths ultimately do act as a large proportion of their customers. So to them, profit's profit. They're going to do what they can to make more money. And I mean, some companies may have the best interest in also looking at the best interest of society and youths, but a lot of them will just be focused on profit. So that being said, these manufacturers, they need to use different marketing mediums. Like everything from the billboards to the packaging to the product itself, typically it can be aimed at teens, so this needs to be changed. And as taking a social marketing approach, it would be best to cooperate using a cooperation tactic. Looking at the best interest of not only the manufacturer so they can still be earning money, but also reaching a solution where we can lower the amount of youth vaping and underage consumption. And if some manufacturers are not willing to cooperate, then it's going to have to be the competition tactic will have to be employed. However, since these corporations practice fiduciary imperative, they have no incentive to reduce the marketing and production of their products. They are protected and bound by law to act on their shareholders' interests. So it's a bit of a conflict. The challenge becomes finding a balance between the doers, the challengers, and the resistors, or finding the most plausible and pragmatic way of decreasing the prevalence of vaping among youths. But these are the stakeholders. I hope I can give you guys gave you a bit more of a better understanding of who's exactly involved in this social issue, and I will be handing it off to the objectives.